Hey skiers, I'm Jeff from skiessentials.com.
And I'm Bob. How's it going?
Bob and I are here today to talk about the Black Crow's Serpo. I thought this was interesting. This is going to be the 4th season for the Serpo. 2026
Right, yeah.
will be the 4th season for the Serpo. That's a pretty long lifespan for a ski with no shape or construction updates.
Before we came in here, I made a list
Of other skis.
other skis that have followed similar arcs.
We didn't plan this. It's almost like we spend a lot of time together.
I think it'll be fun to get to my list at the end, but
Yeah.
so
this is, not something that I shared with you yet, nor vice versa, interestingly. But I'm curious your opinion here, Bob. Going into its 4th season, so it's not new, but to me it still feels very current. Do you agree?
yeah, and kind of my point about that is why change it? You know,
Right.
there's a lot of skis, especially I think in bigger companies. You know, you see like someone like Blizzard that
Like
are
3-year runs, basically.
Yeah, and they kind of have to in order to kind of keep up and keep relevant.
Yeah.
But smaller companies don't seem to need to do that as much, or
Yeah,
other ones
sure.
that don't have the reach, I guess. But yeah, I think it's really interesting that Serpo has followed this, and this one is even 1 year older. the Justice.
Yeah. So if you're curious and wondering why there's 2 different skis up here, the skis closest to the sign are the Serpo. The gold skis, that's the Justice. And basically the only reason we brought the Justice is because these 2 skis are like kind of in a family together.
Yeah.
It used to include Orb as well. Basically the skis that Black Crows make that use H-shaped metal.
Right.
So it's kind of like the big brother to the Serpo.
Yeah.
And I do think it's important to call out some differences between them, both in construction and in shape and performance as well. But I think the construction part is interesting because on paper they're very, very similar, but when you start to hold them and flex them and stuff like that, they're quite different.
Yeah, for sure.
So do you want to just use that as a segue and take us straight into construction, Bob?
Yeah, and just to backtrack a minute, we kind of intended to do this as an on-snow review at one point this winter, and
yeah, so we have footage, I think, on older graphics.
yeah, that one right there on your right.
Yeah, so you'll see some footage of Luke on this graphic,
Yeah.
as well as some footage of Bob and I on this graphic.
Yeah, and it would have been a fun on snow. We had kind of a weird day with a lot of wind, and
Right, we couldn't talk.
we couldn't
right?
talk.
Yeah.
There was no talking to be done
Yeah.
on the hill that day. But yeah, so 2022, so 22, 23, 24, 25, into 26. This will be the 5th year
Oh, thanks.
of this ski coming out. So 22 is the first year.
Yeah, that was pretty bad math.
It's fine. Years
Okay.
are confusing. I get it. But yeah, nothing has changed.
Yeah.
So poplar wood core, fiberglass laminates, and then double Titanal underfoot. And we are kind of in the midst of a discussion right now as to how much of that is H-shaped and how much of it is not.
And we should clarify that this is a discussion only between Bob and I that
Yeah.
goes against basically everything that we've been told.
Or talked about for 5 years.
So grand speculation.
Yeah, but there is 2 sheets of metal underfoot especially, and I'm just unclear as to how far it extends into the tips and tails.
Yeah, and basically the only reason that this came up is because when you hold a Serpo next to a Justice and look at the sidewall, in the Serpo you can see the metal and it ends there, which is interestingly where the H wings
Yeah.
start. But in the Justice you can see the metal actually go past the end of the wings of H.
Right, which led me to believe that the raised portion of the ski that's in an H shape is,
Perhaps not an exact indication of the placement of the metal.
it could very well be independent of the placement of the metal. So
Yeah.
some questions as to what type of H shape is involved in here, even though Julien Reynier in his video specifically
metal
says
shaped like an H.
yes.
Yep.
So
And I trust him fully because he owns the company.
yeah, But
it is interesting.
Yeah.
And it kind of doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
It actually would make more sense to me that there's less. I was like, yeah, these have the same metal H.
Yeah.
And up until 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
But in that last 10 minutes, I'm like, actually, this makes a lot more sense for how this skis, that it might not be the same laminates.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily know that that's enough evidence to say that you're right in your hypothesis here, because it's also much thinner.
Yes.
So if you look at this ski if you look at Serpo next to Justice, the core thickness, especially through like kind of the fore and aft sections, it's much thinner.
Yeah.
And the reason that we bring that up is because this does have a much softer flex pattern, especially in the tips and tails.
Yes.
Like it's always felt very soft and supple in the tips and tails to me, where if you compare it to Justice, like that's a stiff ski.
There's a significant
throughout,
difference.
like the whole tip to tail, just really stiff. So it is just interesting. And then it's not an exact comparison, but I'm kind of curious. I've got a 180, we're 3 centimeter difference between Serpo and Justice.
And there's a decent difference in weight.
Yeah, so 1750 for Serpo and 2000 for Justice. So that's a much bigger difference than 3 millimeters would provide if the construction were totally the same.
Yeah.
So I don't know, kind of just interesting.
Yeah, I've always felt like these had a woodier feel to them because of the
Justice.
Yeah, because of the energy that you get out of it and the snap involved.
And a lot of snap. It's a very rewarding ski, isn't it?
It is. And that's pretty much it for construction in terms of us. I mean, other than making multiple cuts across and seeing exactly where it ends and where it goes. Yeah, tough to tell.
I think that's the next stage for us, Bob.
Multiple choppings of skis.
Circular saw.
Yeah.
In the studio.
Okay.
And we will read the manufacturer's description of their construction and then just cut like 1-inch sections through the whole ski and be like, no metal there.
Yeah, no carbon in here.
Yeah, let us know in the comments if you'd like us to just start cutting skis into pieces.
I can assume that it'll be a resounding yes.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I have 2 circular saws. I don't need 2 at home.
Nope. I think we just need safety glasses and some gloves.
And like maybe some sort of vent system. Now we're getting pretty intense. Do you want to hand me that, Skeet, so we can talk about shape here? I'll hand you a Justice so we can compare and contrast. 93 millimeters underfoot in the Serpo, which, you know, to me places it squarely in the all-mountain category. And this is going to be a theme throughout this video of how squarely it falls into categories. And by that, I mean it really feels like a ski that's kind of right in the middle of a lot of different spectrums. And one of them, I would say, is shape, and I would say it's true for construction as well. It's not the softest ski, it's not the stiffest ski, it's not the lightest, it's not the heaviest, it's got some metal, but not a lot of metal. And then talking about shape here, it is kind of a traditional directional shape with some modern influence to it. So there's a decent amount of tip rocker up here. But how much, you've got more tip rocker and more splay.
Everything about this is more. You taper, your splay, your rocker length, everything.
Yeah, really not a tremendous amount of early taper, which interestingly you don't have either.
No, but like the front of the ski doesn't touch the ground until way back here.
That's very true, where you can tip the Serpo on edge and you'll engage all the way up to there. And then flipping them over, you know, similar story here in Serpo. That's a decent amount of tail rocker for a 93 underfoot ski, but it's not a crazy amount. You know, it's not like, what has more? QST 94 would probably have a little bit more rise in the tail there. Wrestler 9, stuff like that. Like they have a lot more splay and rise in the tail. And Justice is a big difference.
For having as much metal and as thick of a wood core, this amount of rocker in the tail is pretty unique in a 100 millimeter ski.
Yep. And then similar concept in the tail here for taper. There's not really much taper there. And It's camber underfoot in the Serpo, but it's like not much.
No, it's a flatter overall profile.
Yeah, and 20-meter radius, and I think like the flatter camber height combined with the rocker profile and some supple flexing tips and tails and a 20-meter turn radius, on paper, that is a recipe that you can really manipulate this ski and get it to do what you want it to do.
Yeah.
And that's always how I've felt on it.
Yeah. There are some subtle differences. You had mentioned the QST 94, and a ski like that, you know, kind of jumping slightly ahead to on-trail performance, but that ski makes more eager S-shaped turns because of the shorter turn radius.
Sure.
So it can do that a little bit better than something like the Serpo with a 20. And to kind of bring it back to something like an older Dynastar M Pro 90 or 99 that has that longer radius, a little bit more of a direct tail. If you wanted to make short turns, you have to put a lot more effort in.
Yeah.
But they're happy in the longer turn format.
Yeah, so you want to talk about performance? We already you kind of just started talking about
Yeah,
performance.
I mean, it's just like, it's the radius that integrates into the performance that really brings out the unique nature of this ski.
Yeah, you said eagerness, I think?
In more S-shaped turns. This is more eager in a Z-shaped turn. For shorter turns.
Okay.
But if you want to let it run, it is very happy to make them round.
Yeah, so starting with off-piste performance, I would say, I mean, my mind for this ski goes to its carving performance, and I think that that's something that it does really well.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that can be enjoyed by a lot of different skiers because it's very easy to enter into carves with the rocker profile and the fact that like that's pretty soft. It's very easy to engage. It never feels like you're fighting the ski at all. There's pretty darn good grip underfoot. It's not like astronomical grip, but it's pretty darn good. And then you can like, you can bend it. If you're in a carving turn, you can bend it and I feel like you can snap it into what feels like a much shorter turn than 20 meters.
Yeah, like at the end, while you're in the turn and getting out of the turn, you feel like there's a shorter radius in the tail than there is in the front half.
I think
that's how it feels to me.
I think it's from bending it.
Yeah.
But whatever it's from, it's very easy to do that, which just creates a very rewarding feel. There's not limitless stability. That's for sure.
Right, and you can tell a difference between Justice and Serpo in that regard.
Yeah, a pretty vast difference between them. And the footage of Luke, if you're watching this and you don't recognize the skier as either Bob or myself, it's probably Luke. Luke rips. He's our leading ski bum racer.
I would put him high on the list on fastest skier on the mountain.
At Stowe?
Yeah.
He's got to be in the top 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is he captain? Probably hear us. Luke, you're the captain of the ski bum team now. So he's a really good skier. He skis on 189 Brahmas as his like daily driver.
And really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, just not too many people are skiing a 189 Brahma.
Points him down the fall line and just flies.
Yeah.
And we had him on the Serpo a day this year, and literally just before walking into the studio to film this video, I said, Luke, what do you think of the Serpo? And I don't remember exactly what he said. Do you remember exactly what he said?
He said it was a little soft.
A little soft.
Yeah.
So if you're the type of skier that, you know, you benefit from a 189 Brahma, or, you know, to now, what's the longest anomaly 88?
188.
Let's just talk about a 182 anomaly 88. If you were to ski a 182 anomaly 88 and then a Serpo and a 180, the anomaly is far more powerful. And I think that's actually a pretty interesting comparison because now they actually share pretty similar shapes.
You know, the 94 in this.
The anomaly.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I said 88 because of Luke on the Brahma, but really the 94 would be a much better comparison. So it's just, there is a limit.
Right.
You can't just ski it like tremendously hard and fast, but you know, it's another one of those conversations of like, what's the what's the population or what's the percentage of skiers that are going to push a Serpo past its limits?
Yeah.
It's pretty small.
Probably not much.
And
yeah.
generally that type of skier knows what they need, like Luke. You
Yeah.
know, like Luke is like, he keeps kind of like looking for a replacement for his Brahma.
He's actually looking for an upgrade.
Yeah, which
For
is
his
like
Brahma.
hard to find. You know,
Yeah,
and-
they're funny. They're fun conversations to have.
yeah. So if you're like Luke, you might not find the Serpo has enough just oomph to
Yeah.
satisfy your skiing. But I think for most skiers, the way that it makes turns on groomers is just fantastic.
Yeah, I do think there's something to be said for that longer radius, though. That's not for everyone, especially if you're progressing.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the longer the radius, the more input you have to put in to change turn shapes and styles, as opposed
Yeah.
to that QST 94, which is just
No,
automatic round turns.
That's true, and that's a good point. It's probably not the best like learning tool.
yeah, but still really fun. And if you know how to get that energy out of the ski, you're going to be highly rewarded.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about off-piste performance?
Yeah, and this is where I'm even more impressed, I think, than on, which
I'm glad that you said that, because I've always thought that, like, kind of like we were talking about with shape, it's like kind of a traditional shaped ski with some like modern tweaks and flair. And that's like how I would describe the way that you ski,
yeah,
specifically the way that you ski off-piste. It's like pretty traditional.
Yeah.
You have like very
Right.
good, like, I don't know, what's the very good like classic mogul technique.
yeah, I try not to vary it up too much. I don't have like
Right.
I don't have a wide skill set of different turn shapes. I'm pretty happy with my
Yeah.
line.
But don't you feel like this ski supports that skiing really well?
Yeah, and on that day that we were out on them this year, like I was even more impressed that you're just you're in the mindset that it's a 93, it has metal, it's going to be tough in kind of variable conditions.
And like a flat-ish tail.
and a flattish tail, and my experience could not have been more different. Like I felt like it was playful and
Yeah.
engaging and not hooky or not catchy.
Yeah.
So it's a nice mix of those things, that flex of the shovel, the longer radius that allows you
Yeah.
to kind of dictate your own turn styles. And yeah, I thought it floated really well.
For 93?
For 93, I thought
I
it floated
agree.
great.
There's something about the way that the tip just keeps wanting
Yeah.
to pop back up.
Yeah.
It's like the bobber kind of porpoising thing. Like I don't exactly know what it is that does that.
It was just way more mobile from a flat-footed perspective than I ever
Yeah.
remember it being.
Yeah.
So it's always fun to revisit things too.
Totally. Now, kind of contrasting that, I would say that I don't have very good like traditional mogul technique, and I'm a little bit more like, I don't know, loose and silly.
Yeah, you like to let gravity do its thing, and you'll adjust accordingly.
Yeah, and like jump off that thing over there,
Yeah.
and then like slash turn over there, and then jump off that thing to go back over there.
Right.
And yeah, adjust accordingly is a good way to
Yeah.
describe how I ski. And like, you know, in total honesty, I would much rather ski a Justice in most off-piste scenarios, because that supports like the straight sideways jump
Yep.
style. But I always absolutely love skiing the Serpo. It wouldn't be my first choice, but it's just impressive to me that I can ski on the Serpo in softer snow and off-piste situations and have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Like we test a lot of different skis throughout the year, and I ski a lot of different skis through trees and bumps and soft snow. And people always kind of like roll their eyes about it being work, but it is work, like
Yeah.
as in like career sense
Sure.
of work. And sometimes I'm not particularly happy or like not having a tremendously good time when skiing a directional all mountain ski to test its off-piste performance, but I always really enjoy the Serpo.
Yeah.
And I agree that it feels like driftier than you think it should, just looking at its shape. There's something about it that like it doesn't like cut through things. It doesn't feel like knifey. It does feel surfy.
This feels knifier,
Yeah.
which is it doesn't have the shape for being knifier, but
Yeah.
it has the power. I don't think that thing has the power to be knifey.
Yeah, so I mean, it's hard for me to think of like, I feel like we say things like this all the time, but it's hard for me to think of like a more well-rounded all-mountain ski. Especially for a skier that wants like a little bit of that traditional influence.
Yeah, and it is way more traditional in nature than, I think we keep coming back to that QST 94 just because it's fresh in our minds, and it does do a lot of those things that Serpo does really well. But QST 94 feels a lot more modern and a little bit more progressive at this point.
Yeah, totally.
That now has a more traditional feel. Maybe that wasn't the case 4
5
years
years ago.
5 years ago.
No, it totally wasn't.
Yeah.
But now it's kind of like, it's sort of changed a little bit in how it compares to other skis in the market because other skis in the market have changed.
Yeah.
Like for me, like I know that I've said this about this ski before, so I'm going to use it as an example. For me, a Rustler 9 is a more versatile, more well-rounded all-mountain ski for the way that I ski.
Yeah.
A little bit more metal, a little bit more rise in the tail, a little bit more like freestyle influence.
Yeah.
But like for a lot of skiers, and I would say you're kind of one of these skiers, it's hard for me to think of a ski that you can do more things on.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a good way to look at it too. You have your Enforcer 94, your Anomaly 94, and this
Stiffer, heavier.
This is that one notch down from that.
Yeah.
So if you're kind of in that mid 90s realm, or like, those skis are kind of a little nervous, then something like this holds up really, really well.
I mean, what are some other skis that are a notch down than Anomaly and Enforcer that we can compare to Serpo?
Like a Declivity 92, perhaps?
I think that's still
maybe in between those.
That's closer to Anomaly and Enforcer, I would say. This feels lighter and more agile. I actually thought like Maverick 96 CTI would be an interesting comparison. Yep. And if anything, compared to that ski, like this feels a little bit more precise, you know, like in how you're kind of like engaging turns. That the shovel, big rocker tapered shovel of that Maverick gives it like real freeridey vibes in the mid 90 range. Like Ripstick 96 Black Edition, like, well, here's an interesting question. Is Serpo right in between Ripstick 96 and Ripstick 96 Black Edition?
No, I think it's
above both.
Above both.
I don't know if I feel the same way about it being above the Ripstick 96 Black Edition, but similar.
Yeah.
I think like that's a pretty good comparison. There's got to be others too.
There's like new versus old head core, 94, 93.
It's almost like if you could blend the two into one ski.
Because it's way softer than a Core 93,
but
not quite as damp as a Core 94.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting
it's
mix
literally
of
a mix of old core and new core.
And then like a Vocal Blaze 94. You know, there's something there.
That's an interesting one to compare it to. This still feels more precise. Don't you agree?
Yeah, like but that new 94s, that's creeping up.
They ticked that up a notch. It still feels like Blaze leans further towards off-piste use, while this outperforms it on a groomer. But yeah, they got closer for sure.
Yeah.
You got any others? Do you have to go alphabetically?
I'm trying to go upwards now. I don't think there's...
It's kind of got like Arcade 94 vibes.
Probably more of a Sender 94 Ti that's now doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
I was thinking of other skis that don't exist anymore, like a Fisher Ranger 94 FR.
That ski was more twin tippy though.
Yeah.
That was considerably more twin tippy. If anything, like thinking back to old Rangers, I would put it up against the 92 Ti.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably closer.
Pretty similar shapes actually. So, anyways, it's a great ski, and it's kind of like, I would give it the Bob tag of, if you don't know what to buy, just buy a Serpo.
Yeah, especially if your priorities are energy, rebound, crispness.
Versatility.
Yeah, I think those are things that kind of put it above some of those other skis we mentioned.
Yeah. So, that's it. That's the Black Crow Serpo. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think of the new colors. I've heard mixed reactions to Black Crow's graphics for 2026. Some people love them, some people don't. As we learned with QST, you're never going to make everybody happy.
No. I think the pink sidewalls are pretty cool, though.
Yeah,
That's a nice touch.
Hope that comes across on camera.
Yeah.
Also, probably something that's going to be very polarizing.
Right. I mean, they do come in shorter lengths. So you have that 160 over there. It does come in the next size down in 152. So while it doesn't have a birdie version, it does come in shorter lengths.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's no birdie version.
Yeah.
I don't really know why not.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Anyways, so that's the Black Crow Serpo. Let us know if you have any questions, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye.